Before we start, I need you to do something for me. Close your eyes and imagine a cemetery at night, not the kind you see in movies with gentle moonlight and neatly trimmed grass. Picture a place where the air feels too thick, where the shadows stretch just a little too far, where every sound seems to carry a weight you can't explain. Can you feel it? That chill creeping up your spine, that sense of being watched, that's where this story lives. Hold on to that feeling, because it's only going to get heavier. If that image of Willow Creek Cemetery at night is already giving you chills, stick with me. This story only gets stranger. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button to join me on this unsettling journey. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's out there feeling that same eerie weight. And if you've got a friend who's into mysteries that make you question what's real, share this video with them. Let's see how many of us can handle what's waiting in the shadows of Plot 47B. My name is Daniel Carver. For 12 years, I've been a grave digger at Willow Creek Cemetery, a sprawling, forgotten patch of land on the outskirts of a small town in upstate New York. I'm not here to spin ghost stories or chase cheap thrills. What I'm about to tell you is true. Every detail pulled from my notebooks, the cemetery's records, and moments I still can't fully explain. By the time I'm done, you'll never walk through a cemetery the same way again. Grave digging is a trade most people don't think about. It's not glamorous, not something you brag about at family dinners. It's precise, methodical, almost ritualistic. You measure the plot, 6 feet deep, 8 feet long, 3 feet wide. You test the soil. Clay holds differently than loam, and sand shifts under pressure. You check for groundwater, roots, anything that might complicate the job. At Willow Creek, I worked alone most nights, just me and the backhoe, its engine humming against the silence of the graves. The cemetery's been here since 1832, 30 acres of weathered headstones, some so old the names have worn to whispers. I liked the solitude, the rhythm of the work. It felt honest, at least it did until last October. It began with a routine assignment. October 17th, 2024, 6:43 p.m. I flipped open my leather-bound logbook and wrote, Plot 47B, Jane Doe, no family, county burial. Standard for an unclaimed body. The county sent over a single page of paperwork. Female, mid-30s, cause of death undetermined, found in a riverbed 2 miles from the cemetery. No ID, no belongings, just a body that needed a resting place. We get these every few months. People who slip through life's cracks and end up in Willow Creek's soil. I didn't think twice about it. I grabbed my tools, checked the backhoe's fuel, and headed out into the dusk. The night was colder than it should have been for October. The kind of cold that sinks into your joints and makes your breath fog like a living thing. The air smelled of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the fog was thick, curling around the headstones like it was hiding something. The backhoe's headlights barely pierced it, casting weak beams that flickered across the graves. I started digging Plot 47B, the machine's claw tearing into the soft, rain-soaked earth. The rhythm was familiar, comforting. Scoop, lift, dump, repeat. I was 3 feet down, maybe a little more, when I stopped to check the depth with a measuring rod. That's when I saw it. The soil was wrong. If you've never dug a grave, you might not understand how you learn to read the ground. Soil has a language. Clay is heavy, stubborn. Loam is loose, forgiving. You know the smell of wet roots, the feel of packed earth versus decay. This soil wasn't speaking right. It was too loose, almost fluffy, like it had been turned over recently, not decades ago. And mixed in with it were these fragments, small, white, translucent, no bigger than a fingernail. At first I thought they were pebbles, maybe bits of quartz catching the light. But when I picked one up, it was light, porous, almost like bone. Not human bone, too delicate, too strange. Animal, maybe, or something else. I crouched there, flashlight in one hand, fragment in the other, the fog pressing in like it was listening. My notebook entry was clinical. Plot 47B, 3.2 feet, unknown fragments, possible animal remains. Procedure says you report anomalies to the supervisor, but it was late and I was alone. The county wanted the grave ready by morning, so I kept digging, telling myself it was nothing, just a quirk of the soil. Looking back, that was my first mistake. I should have stopped, called it in, walked away, but you don't think like that when you're in the rhythm of the job. You focus on the measurements, the deadlines, the weight of the earth. I dug deeper, hit 6 feet, squared the walls and climbed out. The hole was clean, textbook. I checked my watch, 9:15 p.m., and started prepping for the casket delivery. That's when I heard it. A sound, low and rhythmic like a heartbeat. Not from the trees, not from the wind, not from the machine cooling down. It was coming from below, from the grave itself. I've worked in cemeteries since I was 19. You hear things, owls, branches, the creak of old gates. You learn to tune them out, to focus on the work. But this sound wasn't like that. It was deliberate, pulsing, like something alive was tapping against the earth from deep below. I stood frozen, my flashlight shaking in my hand, its beam darting across the hole. Nothing, just dirt and shadows. I told myself it was the backhoe settling, or maybe an old water pipe. Willow Creek is ancient, full of forgotten infrastructure, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing against my chest, daring me to move. I wrote it down, keeping it professional. 9:17 p.m., unidentified sound from plot 47B, possible mechanical. I didn't write how my heart was racing, how the fog seemed to thicken around me, how it felt like the cemetery was holding its breath. The next morning, the county delivered the casket. Plain pine, no markings, standard for a Jane Doe. I supervised the lowering, checked the alignment, and filled the grave by noon. The job was done, clean and efficient, but those fragments wouldn't leave my mind. They were too strange, too out of place. I bagged a sample, maybe a dozen of the white pieces, and sent them to a friend, Dr. Alan Reese, who works in a lab at the State University. I didn't tell him much, just asked if he could identify them. 2 days later, October 20th, he emailed back, "Not bone, likely organic, possibly fungal. Need more context." Fungal? In a cemetery? That didn't add up. Cemeteries are sterile environments, biologically speaking. Too much disturbance, too little life. I started digging into Willow Creek's records, kept in a cramped archive room in the caretaker's office. The logs go back to 1832, handwritten ledgers and typed reports, some crumbling at the edges. I pulled the files for plot 47B and the surrounding plots. Most were mundane. Names, dates, causes of death, heart failure, influenza, accidents. But 47B was different. No burials recorded since 1947, when a woman named Eleanor Marsh was buried there. Her file was sparse. Age 34, no family, no cause of death. Just like Jane Doe. That coincidence gnawed at me. 2 women, no names, no families, buried in the same plot, decades apart. It felt like a pattern, but I didn't know what it meant. I went back to 47B that night, October 20th, with a shovel and a flashlight. I told myself I just needed to check the soil again, to be thorough. The air was colder now, the fog denser, clinging to the ground like a living thing. I dug carefully, not deep, just enough to disturb the top layer. That's when I found it. A piece of cloth, half buried, frayed but intact. It wasn't modern, too coarse, too heavy, like something from another era. I pulled it out, and more of those white fragments came with it, scattered like ash in the dirt. The cloth had faint embroidery, barely legible in the flashlight's beam. EM. Eleanor Marsh. My pulse hammered in my ears, louder than the crickets. I logged it. October 20th, 2024, 10:32 p.m. Plot 47B, cloth fragment with initials EM, additional organic fragments. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the cloth fragment in a Ziploc bag, staring at me like it had a story to tell. The fragments, the sound, the initials. They were pieces of something, but I didn't know what. I went back to the archives the next day, cross-referencing survey maps. Plot 47B sat on the eastern edge of the cemetery, near an old drainage ditch, abandoned since the 1950s. I found a 1948 groundskeeper's report mentioning unusual soil composition in that area, with a handwritten note: avoid 47B unless necessary. No explanation, no follow-up. Why avoid it? What was in the soil? I decided to test it myself. I took samples from 47B and two nearby plots, 46B and 48B, for comparison. I'm no scientist, but I've got a basic pH kit and years of experience reading dirt. The other plots were normal, loamy, slightly acidic, typical for a cemetery this old, but 47B's soil was alkaline, unnaturally so, and loose, almost aerated, like something was breaking it down from below. I sent another sample to Alan. This time he didn't email. He called me, his voice tight. "Dan, this isn't fungal," he said. "It's not plant, not animal. The structure's organic, but it doesn't match anything in our database. Where the hell did you get this?" I didn't tell him about the heartbeat or the cloth. I just said I'd follow up, but I felt it, a weight, like I'd disturbed something I wasn't meant to find. By late October, I was obsessed. I started spending every night at Willow Creek, poring over records, mapping the grounds, listening, always listening. The heartbeat sound didn't return, but other things did. Shadows that moved too slowly, lingering at the edge of my vision. A faint smell like wet iron, always near 47B. One night, October 24th, I swear I saw the ground ripple, just for a second, like something was breathing beneath it. I didn't write that down. How do you log something you don't believe yourself? I started talking to the town's elders, people who'd lived here long enough to know Willow Creek's secrets. Most brushed me off, changed the subject. But one man, Harold Grayson, a retired groundskeeper in his 80s, agreed to meet me at a diner. His hands shook as he held his coffee, his eyes darting to the window. "You're digging in 47B, aren't you?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I hadn't told him the plot number. "Stay away from it. There's things in that ground that don't belong." He wouldn't elaborate, but he gave me a name. Dr. Samuel Klein, a botanist who'd studied the cemetery in the 1940s. I tracked down Klein's work at the university library, buried in a forgotten archive. Most of his papers were dry, soil pH, plant surveys, drainage patterns. But one unpublished manuscript, handwritten and tucked in a folder labeled "Restricted," caught my eye. It described anomalous organic growth in Willow Creek's eastern plots, a symbiotic network, neither plant nor fungus, exhibiting responsive behavior. Responsive, like it was alive, aware. I started taking more samples from 47B, using a handheld auger to avoid disturbing the grave too much. The fragments were everywhere now, multiplying with every scoop. The soil was looser, almost crumbly, and the alkaline levels were climbing. I borrowed a ground-penetrating radar unit from a contractor friend, Tom, who didn't ask questions. On October 27th, I scanned 47B. The results were unsettling. The casket I'd buried was there, clear as day, 6 feet down. But deeper, around 10 feet, there was something else, an anomaly, irregular, sprawling, like a network of roots or veins. I logged it. October 27, 2024, 11:48 p.m., GPR anomaly, plot 47B, depth 10.2 feet, unknown structure. I stopped digging after that. I filled the hole, packed my tools, and told my supervisor I needed time off. The county hasn't called me back to Willow Creek, and I haven't asked to go, but I can't let it go. The fragments, the heartbeat, the ground that moves like it's alive, they're burned into my mind. I've got Klein's paper, the cloth fragments, my logs. I've got questions that keep me awake. What's under 47B? Why does it feel like it knows me? Why do I dream of a woman in a dark dress, standing at the edge of the plot, her eyes hidden in shadow? I went back to Harold, the old groundskeeper, one last time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Some things are better left buried," he said. You keep digging, it'll dig back. I asked about the riverbed, the disappearances. He just shook his head and walked away. I'm sharing this because you need to know. Cemeteries aren't just places for the dead. They're alive in ways we can't understand, holding secrets we're not meant to uncover. If you ever walk through one at night, listen closely. You might hear it, a heartbeat, a whisper, something waiting, and if you do, don't dig. Don't disturb the ground. Don't give it a reason to notice you. If this story got under your skin, hit that like button, share it, and tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt something watching you in a place it shouldn't? Subscribe for more stories like this. I don't know if I'll go back to Willow Creek, but if I do, I'll let you know what I find.